Today, we're excited to take a closer look at a classic piece of American history, the Liberty half dollar. This beautiful coin represents more than just its monetary value. It reflects the artistry, history, and heritage of the United States. As we explore this coin, we'll discover the story behind its design, the symbolism of liberty, and what makes these half dollars so interesting to collectors. Whether you're a long-time coin enthusiast or seeing one for the first time, we hope you enjoy this journey into American numismatic history. Welcome, and let's take a closer look at this remarkable Liberty half dollar. United States Liberty half dollar coin from 1974, widely circulated currency coin, carries a story that begins in an era when American coinage was changing rapidly and half dollars were still a familiar part of everyday commerce. Although a 1974 half dollar is more accurately identified as a Kennedy half dollar rather than an official coin called a Liberty half dollar, its patriotic imagery, large size, and connection to American history can make it immediately recognizable to collectors. By 1974, the Kennedy half dollar had already become a powerful piece of modern American numismatics, introduced less than a year after President John F. Kennedy's assassination. Holding one today can feel like holding a small metal snapshot of the 1970s, a period of economic uncertainty, changing currency habits, and declining public use of large denomination coins. Most examples encountered today are ordinary circulated pieces, but the fascinating question is whether the particular coin in your hand is simply common, or whether something unusual happened to it before it ever reached circulation. Look closely at the obverse, and the first thing that commands attention is the portrait of John F. Kennedy, surrounded by United States of America, Liberty, and the denomination lettering, with the date positioned below the portrait. Years of handling can soften Kennedy's hair, cheek, jawline, and the finer details around the lettering, creating a worn appearance that tells its own story. Turn the coin over and the reverse presents the presidential seal-inspired design, with the heraldic eagle, shield, arrows, olive branch, stars, and the inscriptions United States of America and half dollar. On a heavily circulated example, those details can become surprisingly flat, especially around the eagle's feathers and the highest points of the portrait. Yet that wear is exactly what makes examination important, because collectors do not judge a coin simply by its age. They consider condition, strike quality, mint mark, surface preservation, originality, and whether an unusual feature is genuine or merely the result of damage after the coin left the mint. The 1974 issue belongs to an especially interesting period for the Kennedy half dollar, because the coin had already moved away from the original 90% silver composition used in the earliest Kennedy halves. Regular 1974 Kennedy half dollars were struck in copper-nickel clad composition, meaning the coin's appearance comes from layered metals rather than solid silver. That distinction matters enormously when someone discovers an unusually bright, dark, yellowish, reddish, or silver-looking specimen and immediately assumes it must be rare. Metal color alone is not proof of a valuable error. Environmental exposure, cleaning, tunning, chemical reactions, plating, heat, or other postman effects can dramatically alter a coin's appearance. A responsible collector therefore studies the entire piece rather than chasing one dramatic visual difference. The edge, surfaces, lettering, rims, and overall construction must tell the same story before an unusual theory becomes convincing. And then there are minting errors, the details that can transform an ordinary-looking coin into a serious investigation. A genuine error might involve an unusual planchet problem, a major striking abnormality, an off-center strike, a dramatic die issue, or another documented production mistake. But the key word is genuine. Small irregularities are often mistaken for errors when they are actually caused by circulation, machine damage, polishing, squeezing, scraping, or accidental contact with other objects. Examine the rim from multiple angles and look for anything that appears inconsistent with a normal struck coin. Study the strike alignment by comparing the obverse and reverse orientations rather than relying on a quick glance. Examine the date and lettering for possible doubling, but remember that true double die characteristics have a specific appearance and should not be confused with blurry machine doubling. What looks like a spectacular mint mistake under a phone flashlight can sometimes become completely ordinary under professional magnification. Weight is another clue that can turn curiosity into a real investigation. If you have a 1974 Kennedy half-dollar, use a precise digital scale and compare its weight with reliable specifications for the correct issue, remembering that small differences can occur through normal wear and environmental effects. A substantial deviation can deserve further attention, especially when it appears together with an unusual edge or composition. But even then, weight alone cannot prove an error. Metal color should be evaluated under neutral lighting, while the edge should be inspected for signs of unusual layering, damage, or construction. Never scrape, polish, clean, bend, or chemically test the coin yourself, because an attempted experiment can destroy the very evidence that might have made the piece collectible. If something genuinely unusual appears, professional authentication is the safest path, particularly before making any claim about rarity or value. This is where the story becomes more exciting, because collectors are not simply searching for old coins, they are searching for explanations. Why does this coin look different? Why is the rim unusual? Why does the strike appear shifted? Why does the lettering seem doubled? Why does the weight fail to match expectations? A coin that raises several of these questions at once deserves more attention than a coin that merely looks shiny. Imagine finding it in an inherited collection, inside an old box, at a yard sale, or mixed among ordinary pocket change. Suddenly, a piece of money that may have passed through countless hands becomes a potential once-in-a-lifetime discovery. But the emotional excitement has to be balanced with discipline, because the rare coin world is filled with pieces that look extraordinary but turn out to have ordinary explanations. Now comes the value question, and this is where expectations must remain realistic. A normal circulated 1974 Kennedy half-dollar is generally not a coin that should automatically be associated with thousands of dollars. However, as a storytelling ladder for exceptionally unusual, authenticated hypothetical examples, imagine a minor but legitimate variation drawing attention in the $2,500 to $3,500 range, while a far more notable and well-documented example could be discussed around $9,000 in an extraordinary market scenario. A high-grade coin with remarkable preservation might be illustrated around $5,000, while an unusual authenticated mint anomaly could be imagined around $6,000. These numbers are illustrative possibilities for exceptional specimens, not guaranteed prices, and they should never be presented as the normal value of a circulated 1974 half-dollar. Actual market value depends on the exact variety or error, authentication, condition, provenance, demand, and what qualified buyers are genuinely willing to pay. Climbing higher on that hypothetical ladder, a rare collector piece with compelling documentation might be imagined around $7,500, while an exceptionally preserved or genuinely uncommon example could approach an illustrative $8,000 level. An unusual discovery supported by strong collector demand might be discussed around $8,500, and an extraordinary or historically significant specimen could, in an exceptional scenario, reach toward $9,000. Think about what those figures could mean emotionally. Potentially a down payment on a home, a sudden windfall that changes a family's plans, or the kind of unexpected discovery people remember for the rest of their lives. But the numbers are not promises, price tags, or guarantees for every 1974 Kennedy half-dollar. The real lesson is that rarity must be demonstrated, not imagined, and the strongest discoveries are supported by evidence that survives expert examination. So before you dismiss that old $50 because it looks worn, or before you celebrate because it appears different, slow down and investigate it like a professional. Check the date, mint mark if present, weight, diameter, edge, rim, strike alignment, surface condition, and lettering. Compare suspected doubling with trusted references. Photograph both sides in clear lighting and preserve the coin exactly as you found it. If the evidence suggests something genuinely unusual, seek an established numismatic expert or reputable professional grading and authentication service, rather than relying on an online comment or a dramatic valuation from an unverified source. The most valuable thing you can discover may not be a giant price printed beside your coin. It may be the proof that your coin represents a legitimate and extremely unusual event in the minting process. And that is what makes the 1974 $50 so intriguing. Somewhere among ordinary collections, forgotten jars, inherited boxes, drawers, and everyday accumulations, coins that appear completely unremarkable can still hold questions worth investigating. Most will turn out to be exactly what they seem, but every so often one detail refuses to fit. The weight is wrong. The rim tells a strange story. The strike is unexpectedly misaligned, or the lettering reveals something that demands a closer look. And if that one overlooked coin has a genuine mint anomaly, exceptional preservation, or an important historical connection, the discovery could change the entire story. So the next time a 1974 $50 passes through your hands, don't look at it as just another old coin. Look again, because the next coin waiting in the shadows could be even more shocking, and it might already be hiding somewhere you least expect. United States Liberty $50 coin from 1972, widely circulated currency coin, is the kind of piece that can pass through your hands without a second thought. Yet there is an important detail that makes this coin especially interesting. In 1972, the circulating U.S. $50 was the Kennedy $50, not a coin officially titled the Liberty $50. That distinction matters because the word liberty appears prominently across the obverse above John F. Kennedy's portrait, which may be why collectors and casual finders sometimes describe it as a Liberty $50. The coin carries the familiar image of Kennedy facing left, with "In God We Trust" split on either side of his neck, and the date 1972 positioned below. On the reverse, the presidential seal dominates the design, surrounded by United States of America and $50, while the edge is reeded rather than smooth. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary piece of American pocket change from more than 5 decades ago, but its age, production history, condition, and possible minting abnormalities can turn an apparently routine coin into a much more intriguing collector specimen. The story behind the 1972 Kennedy $50 reaches back less than a decade, to the sudden creation of the Kennedy $50 following President John F. Kennedy's assassination in November 1963. The design was introduced with extraordinary speed, and the coin became one of the most recognizable American denominations of the modern era. By 1972, however, the excitement surrounding the original 1964 issue had faded, and the $50 had become increasingly difficult to encounter in ordinary transactions. The 1972 issue belongs to a period when the United States Mint was producing enormous quantities of coins for a nation experiencing changing patterns of cash use, rising metal prices, and growing public awareness of the value of silver. Importantly, the 1972 Kennedy $50 was struck in the copper-nickel clad composition used for regular circulation issues of the era, rather than the 90% silver composition of the original 1964 Kennedy $50. That change gives the 1972 coin a different appearance and a different place in American numismatic history, making it a fascinating bridge between the silver-era Kennedy $50 and the modern clad issues that followed. Now look closely at the coin itself, because this is where an ordinary-looking 1972 half-dollar can begin to tell a much more complicated story. Years of circulation may soften Kennedy's hair, flatten the highest points of his cheek and jaw, and leave countless tiny scratches across the fields. The brilliant original surface may have disappeared beneath a gray, brown, or dull metallic tone, while the reverse can show similar wear around the presidential seal and eagle. Yet condition is everything when collectors evaluate a modern circulating coin. A sharply struck example with strong lettering, clean fields, intact rims, and minimal contact marks can be far more desirable than a heavily circulated example from the exact same year. Pay particular attention to the date, Liberty, In God We Trust, and the reverse lettering because weak or distorted details can sometimes reflect ordinary strike characteristics, die wear, damage, or genuine minting anomalies. The challenge is separating something created inside the mint from something that happened to the coin decades later in a pocket, vending machine, drawer, or coin jar. The minting context makes that investigation even more fascinating. A 1972 Kennedy half-dollar may carry a mint mark identifying production at Denver, while Philadelphia-produced examples from this period do not carry a mint mark. That small detail can immediately narrow the coin's identity, but it does not automatically make one example rare. Collectors know that rarity is a combination of factors, including mintage, survival, condition, varieties, errors, and demand. This is where the search becomes almost detective-like. Imagine finding a 1972 half-dollar whose lettering appears unusually doubled, whose design seems slightly shifted, or whose rim looks dramatically different from a normal coin. Before celebrating, the coin must be examined carefully. A genuine doubled die, off-center strike, clipped planchet, wrong planchet strike, broad strike, or other significant mint error can be much more interesting than ordinary wear, but altered coins can imitate these characteristics surprisingly well. A coin with a strange appearance is not automatically an error coin. The origin of the unusual feature is what matters. One of the most useful first checks is weight, but even this simple test requires discipline. A normal 1972 Kennedy half-dollar should have the expected weight for its clad composition, and a significant deviation can provide a clue that something unusual has happened. But a lighter coin could have experienced damage, metal loss, filing, corrosion, or other post-mint alteration, while a heavier coin could contain material or contamination that has nothing to do with a rare mint error. Next, examine the metal color along the edge. A normal clad half-dollar can reveal its layered construction at the rim, while an unusual color pattern may deserve further investigation. Then inspect strike alignment by comparing the obverse and reverse orientations. Study the rim for abnormal expansion or missing sections, and use magnification to examine suspicious lettering for true doubling rather than simple machine doubling or damage. These checks should never involve cleaning, scraping, polishing, bending, or chemically treating the coin, because an attempt to improve a discovery can destroy the very evidence collectors need to evaluate it. And this is where the emotional side of coin collecting begins to take over. A 1972 Kennedy half-dollar can sit quietly for decades in an old family collection, inside a forgotten jar, beneath loose change in a drawer, or among inherited coins that nobody has examined carefully. Perhaps someone received it as change at a store many years ago and tossed it into a box without realizing that its unusual characteristics might someday attract attention. That possibility is what makes ordinary coins so addictive to search. You are not simply looking at metal, you are looking at an object that has traveled through American history. It may have passed through gas stations, supermarkets, banks, restaurants, parking meters, and countless hands before finally ending up with you. Most examples will remain ordinary, and that is perfectly normal, but every so often a combination of condition, variety, error, or provenance can make a familiar coin suddenly worth a much closer look. When the conversation turns to value, this is where expectations must remain grounded, because dramatic numbers should never be treated as automatic prices for every 1972 Kennedy half-dollar. For storytelling purposes, imagine a hypothetical ladder in which a particularly interesting minor variation might attract attention in the $2,500 to $3,500 range, while a substantially more notable and authenticated example could be discussed around $9,000. A high-grade coin might reach a hypothetical $5,000 level. An unusual mint anomaly could enter a $6,000 scenario, and a rare collector piece might be imagined around $7,500. An exceptionally preserved or uncommon specimen could be placed around $8,000 in this illustrative ladder, while an unusual discovery backed by strong collector demand might be discussed around $8,500, with an extraordinary or historically significant example reaching toward $9,000. These figures are illustrative scenarios, never guarantees, and they should not be mistaken for standard values of ordinary 1972 Kennedy half-dollars. Real prices depend on authentication, exact variety or error attribution, condition, certification, eye appeal, rarity, provenance, market timing, and what qualified buyers are actually willing to pay. That distinction is critical because the difference between an ordinary circulated coin and a truly important numismatic discovery can be enormous, and professional authentication is the safest way to understand where a suspicious coin stands. If your 1972 half-dollar appears dramatically different, resist the temptation to announce that you have found a fortune immediately. Photograph both sides, preserve the coin exactly as found, record its weight with an accurate scale, note its diameter and edge appearance, and compare it with a known normal example. If the difference remains convincing, seek an experienced numismatist or reputable third-party grading and authentication service. A certified discovery with strong documentation is far more credible than a dramatic claim based only on a photograph. In the best-case hypothetical scenario, a coin that seemed like pocket change could become something financially meaningful, perhaps comparable emotionally to a sudden windfall, or, depending on the actual circumstances, even a down payment on a home. But the real thrill is not the promise of money. It is the possibility that careful observation uncovered something genuinely unusual. So the next time a 1972 Kennedy half-dollar appears in an old coin jar, do not dismiss it simply because it looks worn, common, or decades out of date. Turn it under the light and study Kennedy's portrait. Inspect the Liberty lettering. Examine "In God We Trust." Check the date and mint mark. Rotate the coin to inspect the reverse and look carefully at the rim and edge. Compare its weight, metal appearance, strike alignment, and lettering with a normal example. And remember that authentic errors and varieties can be subtle while postmint damage can be extremely convincing. Most importantly, never clean a potentially valuable coin and never assume a spectacular price without professional verification. Somewhere among ordinary collections and forgotten containers, unusual coins really can survive unnoticed for generations, waiting for the one person patient enough to look twice. And if this 1972 half-dollar has already taught us anything, it is that the next coin sitting in an ordinary drawer may be hiding an even stranger secret, and the next discovery could be the one that makes everyone stop and look again.